Hello, my name is Sapphire Dorfman, and this is my presentation for my project, Utilizing Direct Phonemic Awareness Instruction to Support Intervention in the Title I First Grade Classroom for June of 2023. So a little bit about me. I am currently a first grade teacher in the Beaverton School District. This is my fourth year teaching and my third year in first grade. And I also got my bachelor's of science from Western, so I'm really excited to be back here to get my master's as well. Okay, so chapter one of my project was where I introduced my project and talked about my rationale for picking it and what motivated me to do this project with my students and what my intentions were behind my project. So a lot of why I picked my project was my background as an educator. I started out teaching in 2019 in fifth grade at my school, and the pandemic hit. And then afterwards, I was moved to first grade online. And I just really didn't know how to teach foundational literacy. I'd never done any work in the primary classrooms. And so I really was kind of out of my depth. And so like a lot of new teachers do, I relied heavily on the district curriculum, which is the Lucy Calkins workshop curriculum. It is very whole language. It's a very whole language approach to reading instruction. And I quickly realized that it was not working for my students. I joined the letters cohort and the master's program at WU for reading this year. And I kind of figured out why. And that's because the district curriculum does not have a strong phonics curriculum, and it also has no phonemic awareness instruction within it. And so that's when I really came up with this project for my students. And over here on the side too are the learning outcomes that are outlined in the program, which I think I met through my work in my project. So really, this quote by Maya Angelou really describes kind of why I picked to do my project. And that's because when you know better, when I found out about the power that phonemic awareness instruction could have, you do better. And so this project was my attempt at doing this. So then chapter two, I talked about the research that I had done on phonemic awareness and how to incorporate it into the classroom setting in my literature review. And here I also really talk about why reading is such a complex skill. It's not a natural process that happens for students, and they can't just be placed into literacy-rich environments and suddenly learn how to read. They have to be explicitly taught. And the section of literacy instruction that I really wanted to focus on is phonemic awareness. And that's a part of a component of phonological awareness that focuses specifically on the phonemes or the individual sounds in words. And there are three common themes that I found in the literature that I am going to quickly talk about here. So theme one was that phonemic awareness is a foundational skill in reading, and it has to be explicitly taught for students to be able to do all the skills that phonemic awareness includes. So Brady in 2020 talked about how beginning readers must be able to recognize the individual phonemes before learning that they are represented by individual grapheme. So before students can form those letter sound correspondences, they have to be able to find and recognize the individual sounds and words and be able to manipulate them. Theme two really talked about how phonemic awareness is an indicator of future reading proficiency. And the IRA in 1998, which is now the International Literacy Association, so the ILA, stated that as a proven fact, their words, not mine, that phonemic awareness predicts future reading success. And this makes a lot of sense to me, and it made a lot of sense to me when I was beginning this project, because since learning to decode words is the true foundation behind reading itself, students have to be able to recognize the individual sounds and words. And so phonemic awareness instruction is a crucial part of this process. And then theme three that I really found in the literature is that phonemic awareness is the most effective when it is combined with a comprehensive reading program. And Carson et al. In 2019 talked about how the inclusion of explicit phonemic awareness instruction with a combination of instruction on phoneme and grapheme correspondences would be a way to reverse the high number of school-age children who are underperforming in reading achievement. And this makes sense. The more that we teach our students the skills of phonemic awareness and then incorporate those skills of phonemic awareness with phoneme grapheme mapping activities, the more that they would be able to read and decode words while they read. So the literature really impacted that I read really impacted my project in those ways. And I'm going to talk about that in the next chapter, which is chapter 3, or my methodology. And this is how I organized and developed my project and how I integrated it into my classroom setting. So quickly, I want to talk about my school and classroom demographics. So I work in a Title I school in Beaverton, Oregon. We have over 500 students in our school. 22 students are in my classroom currently, which is actually very low for the usual amount that we have. I have one tag student, one student with a 504 plan. And here are the two demographics that really I kind of organized my project around. And that's my 8 ELL students, most of which are Spanish speaking. And then I also have 5 students with IEPs for speech and articulation, one who is also deaf and hard of hearing. And so with those two demographics, I really saw there was a big need for phonemic awareness instruction. So I'm glad that I picked that project. And I used 2 main curriculums in this project, and that is the Hegarty phonemic awareness curriculum and the UFly phonics curriculum, which has a really big base in phonemic awareness and incorporates phonemic awareness principles throughout all of its lessons. How it kind of started is I started with the Hegarty curriculum, which my district adopted, and we did those in whole group lessons. And then I kind of saw that there was a need for me to incorporate more, for me to do more, especially with certain students. And so we use the Hegarty curriculum kind of with theme 1. In isolation, really focused on phonemic awareness work. And then later we incorporated the UFly curriculum, which then really met what theme 3 was talking about, informing those phoneme graphing correspondences and building on that phonemic awareness work. And I kind of decided early on that it was kind of hard for me to evaluate growth without, considering the observations that I was seeing and the growth that I was seeing. And so that leads me to chapter 4, which is my vignettes and supporting images chapter. And these vignettes include my journals, my reflections, and examples of my work in this project, along with supporting images. I chose vignettes because I really wanted to capture the growth that I was seeing and show the development in my students that I was seeing throughout the course of my project. And so I thought that this would be the best way for me to show those learning examples and show how I applied the resources and the knowledge that I had gained throughout this project to help my students. So I'm just going to quickly highlight some of the vignettes. They're all in my paper, but they're not all in here. These are just kind of the ones that I wanted to really show. So a big resource that we use is from the UFly online resources. I can't recommend them enough. This is a picture of the vowel valley, which also shows correct mouth placement for the different phonemes that students had to learn. And so we use these resources from UFly to practice correct mouth placement. And this was particularly useful. And the light went off. This was particularly useful in my classroom for vowel sounds because a majority of my ELLs are Spanish speaking, and Spanish only has 5 vowel sounds versus here in the UFly curriculum, they identify 19 vowel sounds in English. So this was definitely a resource that we used a lot and a concept that we really had to go over. Then another vignette talks about the tapping strategy that we used in our classroom. So this was a strategy that we originally used during the Hegarty whole class time to segment phonemes. And then my students started to use it in all other areas of literacy. I would see them using it during their writing, when they were trying to spell out words. I would see them using it during their reading when they're trying to sound out words. And so this strategy that we taught explicitly with our phonemic awareness curriculum was then applied in so many other ways, which was great to see. And then a big thing that theme 3 talked about was working on those phoneme graphing correspondences. And we did that through phoneme graphing mapping activities. So this is a picture of me doing a small group with magnetic letters and doing word chains. So word chains are where we change out one phoneme, one grapheme at a time. And students have to figure out which one changes and which one they need to change then. So they have to apply their knowledge of the phonemes and corresponding grapheme to be able to change the word chain. And this is a great way to get that phoneme graphing mapping practice. And it's very hands-on, that the students really enjoy doing it. Another way that we got that phoneme grapheme mapping practice in was through the use of the UFly Blending Board app, which is another resource from the UFly online resources. And it's another activity that gives them another opportunity to practice those skills while also incorporating some engaging technology use into the classroom, which is, always welcomed in today's world. So they really enjoy using this app, and I really can't recommend it enough. And these activities were not only used in small group settings, but they also could be used in whole group settings. So this is a picture of some word chain work in a whole class setting. And in here, we were actually reviewing our controlled vowels in our reading curriculum and focusing on them in our writing. So then we also did word chain work to practice those phonemes and their corresponding graphemes through the use of magnetic letters. And so this is a picture of one of my students going up to the board, and he's changing the word hard to the word heard. And so this was also another great way for us to practice as a class. So the other vignettes are all in chapter 4, but chapter 5 was surrounding me reflecting on my project. And I talked about what I learned through my project, the impact that I saw in my students, and the growth that I saw in myself as an educator. And my project was really kind of interesting to do because I felt like I was in a constant cycle of reflection. And every day I had to reflect on what my students learned and what my students needed in order to change my practice to help them more. And so I felt like I was constantly reflecting. Reflecting on this project, though, I am so incredibly thankful that this was the topic that I picked and this was the way that I integrated it into my classroom setting, because I saw so much growth in my students. And I talk about this a lot in my vignettes, but I just seeing them apply the skills that we used in our phonemic awareness curriculum into other areas of literacy showed me that they really understood the concepts that we were talking about and able to translate them into other aspects of my instruction. And this was great to see. Also in my vignettes, I really reflect on my growth as an educator. And it was super interesting for me to see, to think, I would have reacted this way or said this or done this before I had all the knowledge that I do now through my work in the letters program and in my master's program at WU. Before I had all this knowledge, I used to react like this. And now I know that this is the correct way to handle it. And this is how I can support my students further. And it was great to reflect on how many resources I gained, how much knowledge I gained. And I am so thankful that this was the project that I picked and that this was the result of it, because I really feel like it was such a positive step for me to take as an educator, and so powerful for my students to also engage in. These are the ILA standards that I believe I met through this project. And, my next steps are PD and advocacy. I really want to advocate for others, especially newer teachers who are in the same boat as I am, to be able to get the training and the professional development that they need in order to really be able to support their students. And I feel like it really should be more easily accessible. And so I definitely will be advocating for that in the future. And I might also just put on some PD myself at this point. I feel confident enough to do so. And I would love to help others kind of know all the research that I've done and see how I integrated it into my classroom and the growth that I was able to see from it. Here are my references for the different things that I mentioned in my presentation. My project itself has a lot more references than this. And I also just wanted to say a big, gigantic thank you to my committee members, because I really appreciate their help and their support, and also how much they helped me grow as a teacher. And thank you so much for taking the time to do this and for believing in me and cheering me on. I really appreciate that so much. And also a big thank you to Morgan Perky from the WU Writing Center, who probably knows way more about foundational literacy and phonemic awareness than she ever thought that she would. And yeah, this is my presentation for my project. Thank you so much for listening. And please let me know if you have any questions or any feedback for me, because I would love to hear it. And I really appreciate all your support. Thank you so much. Bye.